Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back again. Music. It's all about music, right? It's the music, stupid. It's about the music. And I'm not going to review a book for you right now, a brand new book called And the Roots of Rhythm Remain, A Journey Through Global Music by Joe Boyd. This is a book I think he had been working on and off for about 17 years. And if you've been following the channel, I've mentioned Joe Boyd ad nauseum. Amazing career, a great producer. Just to give you a little background, if you haven't seen those videos, I'm repeating myself, but his memoir, maybe it's 15, 20 years ago, called White Bicycles, is a fantastic journey, his personal journey about being from the Boston area, moving to the UK at some point, expatriate, became a record producer, produced the very first single by Pink Floyd, opened a club called the UFO Club with someone in England, and the house band was Pink Floyd, and really initially brought these blues artists to the UK for all these young bluesmen that would the great classic guitar scenes like the Jeff Becks and the Eric Claptons and the Jimmy Page to watch these blues players actually perform in person. They had been influenced by them, and Joe Boyd was very instrumental in that. Worked for Elektra Records as an A&R and producer, opening the office in the UK, and just a fan of world music. Now, my introduction to him was really the records he produced in the kind of British folk scene. And I'm going to go through this again. I want to talk about this book a little bit, but I haven't read it. I've skimmed a little bit of it, but look at this. This is bigger than the Bible. This is like all five books of Moses and the New and Old Testament put together. God, is it 1,000 pages? It's 800, 900 pages. But I'm so excited about this. This is going to be in my nightstand or in my living room, and I'm going to probably read this over the next year. Pick up, when you're in the mood, a little bit at a time, 100 pages here, 50 pages there. But I do want to give you a little background on the book because he talks about what I've skimmed and read in the blurbs. It's about world music. It's about all these different music of countries, and he does get into the whole thing. There is a bit of an argument or a discussion, I should say, about appropriation. Obviously, the number one poster child would be Paul Simon of the Graceland, but Paul Simon paid Lady Blacksmith Mambuza. He paid those artists early on with Simon and Garfunkel, and he brought from South America Urubamba, and they got signed to Columbia. So that is the difference. Introducing this, for me, I always cite George Harrison and Ravi Shankar and the sitar. He turned me on as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old to Indian music, and then I got into Indian classical music with obviously Ravi Shankar and a lot of that type of sounds. And it was great at a young age to be turned on to what we now call world music, international music. None Such was a label early on. I remember when I worked in record stores in the 70s, seeing all those amazing world music budget label records for like $1.99, $2.99. And I got turned on to a lot of music by them, the Explorer series as well, from None Such Records back then. But I'm going to read a few of the blurbs on the back because this gives you the essence what this is about. And in this video, I am going to showcase again, a great discography of Joe Boyd's. A lot of records that you all know that you may not know that he produced. And it's not a definitive list. It's records I have on vinyl in my collection. And obviously there may be omissions. I have some on CDs, but I'm not showing those now. Just to give you an idea, the breadth of his production. But there's some important blurs on the back to give you an idea what this book is about. What an amazing book. I doubt I'll ever read a better account of the history and sociology of popular music than this one. Joe Boyd has distilled decades of experience into a tumultuous, gripping, and dramatic story. It has me saying wow on every page. That was written by Brian Eno. So this is a personal journey, but he brings in all these, a lot of African music, obviously the African continent, but other areas. Talks about the Bulgaria, the women. I don't know if you remember in the 80s, those the choir, the Bulgarian singers got very popular, and those records sold really well. And of course, Kate Bush used them on one of her records too. Another one, One Only Hopes. This can be taught in schools. And that was Ry Cooder. I mean, this is definitely it's going to be one of those great Bibles of music, of world music, and even, Western music and the influences they had on each other. An amazing tome on that. Here's another one. Joe Boyd has an acute ear for music and an astute eye for talent. Here he reveals the searching intellect, the generous spirit, and the deep heart beneath his extraordinary life's work. And that's T-Bone Burnett. And of course, love this book. Joe Boyd gives us the wider and deeper context that shaped music, and in many cases, he was there. It's big, but it's a page-turner, David Byrne. And of course, profound and beyond. Few words from Robert Plant. The little bit I picked up on, there was a little thing about David Byrne and how he gets really into the drums and the rhythms of African music, and how that was a big part of it, and how that really influenced, obviously, the Talking Heads when they really got in their more rhythmic albums, their third, fourth album, when that happened. And so this is a major, major book, and I can't wait to kind of start going through it and getting in details and other stories of it. But I'm going to recommend it, and again, you shouldn't recommend a record you haven't listened to, and maybe you shouldn't recommend a book you haven't read. But I did read Joe Boyd's original memoir here, and I know about the breadth of his recordings. I know the influence he had with blues bands, coming from the Boston area, roommates with Jeff Muldaur and his girlfriend at the time, Maria D'Amato. I'll talk about her a little later, and then going to the UK and working for these labels. And of course, years later, he would, in the 90s or late 80s, 90s, start Hannibal Records, his label. And I'm just showing, this is the only CD I'm going to show. This is a comp of instrumentals, a collection of instrumentals on Hannibal Records, world music, great stuff from folk to various countries. And I was a fan of Hannibal music during that period, in the CD era. Here are a bunch of records produced by Joe Boyd. I just showed the Incredible String Band. Now, the one record I'm missing is 5000's The Onion, that one, the more psychedelic 1967 record. But we got The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter. We got We Tam. We got The Big Huge. And we got this one, Changing Horses. Scottish group, as I said in that other video about 1967, kind of a hippie-ish thing of bringing some world traditions, organic, acoustic, other instruments and sitars and percussive stuff. And an album that burned brightly, mostly in the UK, more of a cult in the US. And then, of course, implosion at Woodstock, missing their moment in the sun on stage because of the rain. And then didn't get a featured spot, and didn't get on the album, and the rest is history of that. Now, of course, an artist that I think needs no introduction here, but maybe 20 years ago, most of you had never heard of Nick Drake. And of course, Pink Moon, this song, because of Volkswagen, brought Pink Moon to a larger audience. Using that song in a commercial, 15 years ago or so, give or take. I remember these records in the store when I worked in stores in the early 70s, mid 70s. I don't remember a lot of people buying them or ever even hearing them. So I'm as guilty as charged as well. But a beautiful introspective folk singer. Unfortunately, he wasn't good playing live. 5 Leaves Left, of course, and Briar. Here's the great Nick Drake. Joe Boyd does have a reputation of in my mind too, of being a curator of British folk rock and folk music. And that's how I see him. Now, he's done other things. In fact, I probably should have started with this just because it's important. This is the Relics comp that came out Pink Floyd comp with Nick Mason's cover art. The American version looked like this. And only 2 sides did Joe Boyd produce. This A side, Arnold Lane, is on this comp. I don't have those singles, but he produced Pink Floyd, the first single for them. They get signed to EMI. They get signed to, they have to record at Abbey Road. But in those days, they had to use the EMI's house producer, which was Norman Smith, who had left the Beatles as an engineer to produce the band that he was going to produce, and that would be Pink Floyd. So Joe Boyd didn't get to produce those records. Another artist who I adore is John Martin, and he produced 2 records, as far as I know, of John and Beverly Martin. Of course, they would get divorced, and John Martin would go on his own. Great guitar player, singer, got a little bit of a jazzy thing. One of the first guitarists I knew that seemed to have different effects when I saw him live in 1973. An all-island bill with Free with Paul Rogers and Traffic. And this is a wonderful promo I'd gotten years ago from Warner Brothers Records. And these records, they're not particularly expensive, but they're not really dirt cheap either. And they're great records. And this is a Stormbringer. This is a UK version of John and Beverly Martin. Again, that folky scene with a really interesting, just a little left of center. That's left, depending on how you're watching this right now. Probably the record that really got me into Joe Boyd was this Fairport Convention record, one of my all-time favorite records. And what an amazing folk rock band, taking traditional songs and modernizing them, or adding a rock beat to it a little bit. Fairport Convention, of course, the great vocalist Sandy Denny, Richard Thompson. I mean, just a wonderful, wonderful group here. Here's Unhalf Bricking. I love that cover photograph. Here is the American version of Unhalf Bricking. Different cover. I think the British vision is killer. This is the one to get on, I think it was on Island, yeah. Island Records. You want a pink eye if you can find it. A pink eye, pink label, a version of it. Of course, there's What We Did on Our Holiday, Fairport Convention. And this is a one without Sandy Denny, but this is Full House. Is this the last one with Richard Thompson? I think. But another great record. Of course, Simon Nicole, Dave Pegg, Dave Swarbrick, and Richard Thompson. Just incredible catalog of records by one of the great British folk rock bands of the 1960s. Next we have Jeff and Maria Muldaur. Of course, Maria was, as I mentioned earlier, Maria D'Amato, and she marries Jeff. Jeff and Joe Boyd were roommates in Princeton, and they worked together a lot of these, this great kind of coexistence and making some beautiful records. And of course, this is a solo record. They divorced, they split up, but Joe Boyd works with both of them individually. Jeff Muldaur is having a wonderful time. Great book. Great singer, great player. You should really seek out Jeff Muldaur records and the 2 Jeff and Maria Muldaur records, one of which was produced by Joe Boyd. It's funny, the other one says produced by Unknown. Who is Unknown? Was it Joe Boyd? How could it be unknown? An offshoot group of Fairport, Sandy Denny leaves Fairport and works with someone who would become her husband for a little while. Is that Trevor Lucas, and then Jerry Donahue, Jerry Conway, and Pat Donaldson. A fantastic one-off. Actually, they did a second album. I don't have the second one, but Fotheringay. This is great. Again, right in like Leave and Leash kind of feel to it. A great folk rock record produced by Joe Boyd, Fotheringay. This is a perfect record. This deserves Intervention. This would be a great record for you to do. And also Leave and Leash. I mean, you seem to have a connection with A&M Records. Then a record that has been rediscovered lately. In fact, expensive, over-the-top archival label in England put this out for about $400. But you can get reasonable reissues. Originals go for a ton of money, and it's a wonderful album. And it's Vashti Bunyan, and this is Vashti Bunyan's Just Another Diamond Day. Again, another wonderful folk record that a lot of people didn't know about her back in the day. Produced by Joe Boyd. This deserves a really good archival release, but this is actually a pretty good copy. I forgot who put this out. This is a $30, $25 record, not crazy, and it sounds good. So now to me, a record that I personally like a lot is, I think this is the debut album of the two sisters, Kate and Anna McGarrigle. And of course, this is Dancer with Bruised Knees, French-Canadian duo of sisters. One was married to Loudon Wainwright III. Of course, one was the mother of Rufus Wainwright. This is a really, really beautiful record with a lot of great musicians on there. You know, he worked with a lot of musicians overlapping on some of the records he would produce in the 70s. And this is a beautiful, beautiful record. He produced, I believe, another record of theirs that I do not have on vinyl. I think I have it on CD. Now, this was a massive surprised hit when it came out in Warner Brothers in the mid-70s. And this is a great record. And this is Maria Muldaur's debut. Well, she had done, I believe, some other things, obviously, stuff with her then-husband, Jeff Muldaur. But Midnight at the Oasis was all over AM radio, FM radio. Great, great record. Great group of musicians on here. You got Richard Green, a violin player from C-Train. You got Mac Rebenek, Dr. John playing piano. Jim Keltner, of course, the great drummer. Chris Etheridge. Clarence White, God, such a great guitar player. Worked with the Byrds and the Kentucky Colonels, and one of my favorite guitar players who died way too soon. Ry Cooder is on here. I mean, anything with Ry Cooder is all right with me. Freebo, the bass player, Amos Garrett, David Grisman, of course, a great mandolin player. This is a beautiful sounding record, and it's a beautifully recorded record. And I just think it's great. And then, of course, the follow-up is this record, and this is Waitress in a Donut Shop, a song that had been originally recorded by Dan Hicks on Hot Licks. I just love this record. I mean, they're really good records, really good sounding records, and a great, just easy 70s records. But I don't mean easy in terms of an MOR, middle of the road thing. They're just really well recorded, great musicianship, great vocals. She had a very unique voice. She's still around, she's still performing, Maria Muldaur, but another record produced by Joe Boyd. Now, probably a record that's considered one of Joe Boyd's classic productions. And it was a cult record for a long time, but to me, it's a record that everyone should own if you like folk rock. And it's an interesting record because of the time of these two artists. They were splitting up. And even in the cover photography, and I saw them soon after this at a show at the Great American Music Hall where it was like literally fire and ice on the stage. But it's Shoot Out the Lights, Richard and Linda Thompson. Even they wouldn't even be in the same studio to take cover photographs, apparently. That's the thing I heard. But this is a really, really great record. Did she jump or was she pushed? Wall of Death. Some of the classic songs that Richard Thompson wrote and Linda. And you got some of the members of Fairport Convention playing along with them on this record. To me, this is an essential record. Of all these records, this is probably one of the 5 essentials. This, Fairport Convention, what other ones? Pink Floyd, obviously, but that's not the whole album. Probably 5,000 Onion, the incredible string band, which I only have on CD now. I need to rectify that. Then we're going to continue on. This would be an essential as well. And this is Fables of the Reconstruction by R.E.M. You know, obviously there's that acoustic thing going on here, but, you know, there are people that just prefer the IRS R.E.M. over the Warner Brothers. It depends on a case-by-case basis, but I was into R.E.M. beginning with Gardening at Night from the beginning on till the very end, even with a couple of semi-disappointing records that I've learned to love over the years. Another great album that Joe Boyd produced was a 1985 album by 10,000 Maniacs. Of course, they became huge. I think this is the only record that Joe Boyd produced, but not any of the big hits on here. Peter Asher had done two of their records, I think, that were more popular in terms of sales-wise, but this is a fantastic album as well. 10,000 Maniacs, produced by Joe Boyd, The Wishing Chair from 1985. And then lastly, but not leastly, one of my favorite artists, and I've showcased his records many times. This is an album that came out originally in the States on Elektra Records, and I believe Cooking Vinyl in the UK. This is Billy Bragg's Workers' Playtime. Capitalism is killing music. I love Billy Bragg. I saw him opening unannounced for Echo and the Bunnymen, I'm thinking 81. First time I ever saw him, he came out and there was a kind of a rowdy crowd getting ready for Echo. And he just pulls out a small amp with his electric guitar and does this almost like power punkish folk thing. Very political, very assault-like, and it was fantastic. This is a good album. I don't think he's ever made a bad album. Obviously, he's gotten more introspective over the years, still political as hell and socialist as hell. I love Billy Bragg. This is a really good album. So that is my non-book review of And the Roots of Rhythm Remain, Joe Boyd. This book is available now. I paid for it, so I'm not shilling it, but I would highly recommend it. And again, recommending a book I haven't read cover to cover is something I would not normally do, but having like gone through it and know the history and the discography of Joe Boyd, I just think the knowledge he has as a musicologist and archivist in a way, this is going to be just a wonderful, wonderful book to read. So thanks for watching. It is about the music, always about the music first. Mazzy loves you.